G'day, my name is Hammer and I'm from Southern Cross University. I have been tailored to present three different cultures, perspectives and attitudes on ethics and communications. In the first part of our topic, we will link the models and theories that is associated to the three different cultures on the communications and ethics, and then compare and contrast it from different perspectives of the culture. The second part of the topic, we will use the assumption of non-Australian project manager being Chinese project manager appointed to build a hospital in the outback of Kenya. We will explore the challenges and the problems for the planning to execution, how the cross-cultural mix play a part. We will attempt to provide a solution to the problem and then summarise and conclude with reference. Now let's look at the theories. Before we get any further, I should say something. When I first read this question, it reminded me of the conversation I had with my boss for the Harmonist Day. He had a group of designers, but not every one of them is different in terms of ethnicity. I'm of Pakistan, India, and Serbia, and Malta, and they couldn't agree on anything except it was very hard to understand them. But on the Harmony Day, they all come together to show how proud their culture is, and some are trying to outlay the others. This goes to show we could all work together if we understand each other. Now let's look at the definitions of cultures in terms of communications, ethics, and also I have outlined my perspective on the communication and the culture side, so it's not biased in any way. As you probably know, all the threes are intertwined in one way. Now, in terms of theory, culture is defined by groups of people, their values, beliefs. In Australia, are the multicultural society, and you'll find we pledge our oaths, and when we step in our traditional owners, you'll see that ethnocentrism or prejudice plays a central role in cultural dimensions, stereotyping on the past history and without really understanding the culture and prejudice, having a biased opinion. Two models I have used in the past to understand, or they have used to understand their cultural dimensions. Jeff Hoffman's model. This is a study that led towards the self-awareness of the culture, how their own personal history and culture shaped their views of the world. It is about understanding the cultural norms, behaviours and expectations held by the individuals in different nations. From the study covering 23 countries, there were 6 cultural dimensions. The other formidable model is biased on Hoffman that bridge the gap to identify the traits needed to be successful in the other cultures. There are 9 dimensions described by Globe. Now I want to look at 2 of these dimensions, in particular the power dimension. Power index is about the fact that society's inequalities is endorsed by followers as much as leaders. Now in Australia it's low, with 36 on the hierarchy of the structures. Managers rely heavily on their teams and their expertise, but the managers also employ expertise and consultant information are shared. Now for China it's about 80. Inequality amongst people are acceptable, so the subordinates are superior and relations tends to polarize, and there is no defense against power abuse and superior. People should not have aspirations beyond their ranks. And for Germany, 36 is supported by a strong middle class, and direct participation of communications and meeting style is common. Control is disliked, and leadership is challenged to show expertise and best acceptance it's based on. Now, individualism is in this dimension. It's about cultural value, focus on needs and interest of individuals, groups caring for. So it is very important to look at this, especially if you have a project manager. Will show you if he or she actually cares. In Australia, it's highly individualised. Culture of 90, it means that people look after themselves and their immediate families. In the business world, employees are expected to be self-reliant and disciplinary initiatives. Also, for a foreign worker, it's about what he can do and what he has done. Next is China. 20 is a highly collaborative society in terms of groups, so it relies heavily on groups and not themselves. Personal relationship prevails over task and companies, and with Germany being 67, small families with focus and parental relationships rather there is a strong belief that the ideal of self-actualization Loyalty is based on preference for people as well as sense of duty and responsibility. This is defined by the contrast between employees and employees communications, the ideas of being honest even if it hurts, and by giving counterparts a fair chance to have a go from their mistakes. Now here I have compared all these three countries. As you know, there is a difference in the power distance index. So everything is aimed towards the cultural norms, and that's what ideology in society will actually accept. Now, in slide 7, let's look at the communication side of things. Communication is probably the key to any project by definitions, and has 4 modes of functions: a sender, receiver, a channel, but the most important is the feedback, listening, that the receiver has understood the message. There are many modes of communications, as you probably know, verbal and non-verbal. In our slides we'll look at these 2 particular modes for each of these countries, compare and contrast each one of them. You've got formal and informal, mass communication, virtual. Now the breakdown in communication occurs because of people distractions. There's some sort of noise or glitch within the channel, and it could be because of the body language, where speaking strange, dressing, greeting, emails, gestures, words that might offend. Now, so things like that. Now, the key to communication is with cross-culture is approaching it in a succinct way, understanding their culture. It's about the dialogue and the customs. Now, let's go to slide 8. Australian cultures. You can see we're actually direct in appearance and communication, easily recognisable. Message is polite, avoidance, and dialogue is to be honest. Now, in terms of accent, Australia doesn't have a tone, so it can be easily be changed to make others comfortable. Slang, we use slangs, and short, so everything shortened, less complicated. We also use humour to blend within the group. Swearing is norm, so it actually brings different people and cultures together. There is silence, but too much silence, we tend to actually break through and have conversation throughout there. Other things you need to remember is certain words and phrases said together, and then all of a sudden it's towards the end of the word is what's accepted. So nah, yeah means it's actually nah. Now non-verbal, in terms of eye contact, it's about trust, openness, and being honest. And if you see it too much, I suppose it can be offensive as well in Australian culture. There is a personal space to it, so there's an arm length you need to stand by before you can talk to each other. There is also physical contacts. Touching is prohibited, as you probably know. Now let's look at China. If you look at China, it's in terms of verbal, it's unless you're able to understand Mandarin and other province dialects, then it's very hard to communicate. English is patchy. No one in China means dishonouring and embracing. No actually means, so it's dishonouring, embracing for the intimate purpose. So, and yes means actually yes, not probably yes, not actually yes. So, and then you do have there's not much body language, but if you look closely underneath, there is body language. It's just not we or foreigners interpret it differently. Now, just because China people can speak fluent doesn't also mean the person who's speaking is fully confident. Someone who isn't is probably the most confident in their group. Now, communication flows slowly and less aggressively. For non-verbal, China is in this means facial expressions, eye contact, tones. Chinese is greatly influenced by the Confucius psychological thinking, more reserved and less expensive. However, non-verbals is another voice of China, so being silent sends a strong message to the other person as well. And in terms of gestures, nods and things like that are greeting from China, but must be restrained. They are very slowly restrained. Now, touching is prohibited. Personal space, there is a personal space, physical contact. Again, prohibited. The context of topics is assumed to be known, so when you're actually approaching somebody, they expect you to know that topic well, and there is a hierarchy in the class. Now, the other country I looked at was Germany. Germany is very direct and it's functionalized, so they expect you to know what you're talking about. Always introduced by last names. When meeting, there is a lot of body contacts, elbow patching, shaking. Now there is a secondary follow-up or drag with communication, but slightly less point and meeting with conversation. The conversation needs to be honest and fair. Human, there is a human, but this is where Germans are misunderstood. And silence. If you look at the silence dimension, they only speak when needed, and they don't try and fill the silence in. And for non-normal Germany, people likes makes lots of eye contact taking place. Mostly gestures, index can be interpreted okay or good luck. Now, in the next slide, we look at ethics. Ethics is considered the kind of values and morals of an individual or society vital to appropriate. Ethical theories provides a system of rules or principles that guides us to the decision about with the rights, what is wrong given under the circumstances. So it's really about being true to oneself, and are you in your actions, is it really being done in the right manner. So in Australia you'll find there are other theories that describe ethical, the good theory, the right theory, and which shows how you actually approach ethics. Now, ethics in Australia is very strong. We have code of conducts and disciplinaries from everywhere. So this is something that needs to be adopted for a foreigner in that sector. Stands by its virtues as well. So whereas China, if you compare them, it's very corrupt. Now, for Germany, culture is very strong ethically and stands for the rights. Now, for slide 12. If you compare each one, the model that we use shows that every culture is different, and especially even if you look at power to indulgence, everything's pretty much differs in every way. We find beside the masculinity, the caring side of things, and the communication and ethics are part of the cultural room, so even that is different. What is culture and communication and ethics amongst each other? So if you look at that side, we find there is a vast difference amongst the three countries in communication as how we should approach each other. Human dialogue and body language, verbal and non-verbal communication. However, there is also some commonalities beside each other. So beside China being culturally corrupt, that's normal. Ethical principle to be true to one another is the same for all other countries. Now on slide 13, which is part 2, a project manager is appointed for construction in the hospital out in Wall, Kenya. So the ethical problems and benefits of being a non-project manager is you'll have to main problem is probably the truth and the moral side of things, trusting one another. So this comes over time, I believe, and PMI actually defines this being behavioural as well. So it's a concept that actually underlies three principles: ability, enables, and integrity. You also have location. There's problems with locations. They're trying to adapt to that location, the indigenous people and the customs. So you need to try and know and understand those sort of things. Language and problems, obviously communication misunderstandings, and there are ways of doing and the communication in Australia. Respect the traditional, like the elders, obviously the professional code. The biggest advantage is creativity. Different mind brings different thinking. Now, in slide 14, project managers appoint in the hospital. So it described how the cultural-based problems could be avoided. Cultural conflicts tend to occur in two mains. One is through the stereotype, and this is overcome through prototyping and approaching So the cultural average dimensions of behaviours value, there is a big difference between stereotype and prototype. That's the second common cultural misunderstanding, is the way we tend to interpret others' behaviour, values and beliefs through the lens of our own culture. So what we see is not necessarily what it meant. So to overcome this lens is want to learn as much as you can about other parties' culture. This means not to reaching the customs and behaviours of different cultures, but also understanding why people follow the customs and these values. So it's about self-aware, others' awareness and application awareness to apply as a leader of their using their actual cultures to get the things done. Understanding, accepting and appreciating and adopting is probably the key as defined by Stenberg. Now in slide 15 we look at the summary. So in summary, in this presentation we looked at how the culture actually shapes us from different kind of cultures. We compared and contrasted each one of them using the Hoffman model. We have defined theories in communication and ethical and spoke about ambience and attitude. In part we looked at the building or hospital and walking here, so being outback, remote. It's not ideally, but you need to adapt to that sort of culture. So listed is the cultural problem: trust, location, language, respect, professional, and great advantage of having creativity. We also find the cultural based problems on being stereotyped could be turned to prototype and focus on behaviours and values. The other big issue is cross-culture misunderstanding, and so this needs to be communicated through. And to avoid the problem, one needs to be self-aware, others aware, and application awareness, and understand and accept, appreciate. And here is my reference.